Welcome back to the Severe Setup, everybody. Harry Powell and I are here as always. I can't talk today. It was the same with the balance breakdown, but whatever. Sometimes these things happen in mixed martial arts media coverage. Look at this UFC's card. Not great this weekend. It's safe to say, not great. Chaos Williams, Carlson Harris, probably one of the worst co-main events that you could put on, but whatever. We are going to focus our attention on the main event, Edson Barboza versus Lerone Murphy. The fight is back in the Apex. We're back to no crowds again. Not too much to write home about on the card as a whole. Adrian Yanez on the card, always like him. Abus Magomedov, who kind of was up at the higher end of the middleweight division, finds himself on the prelims in the Apex right now. These things happen. And because of that, we're just going to skip ahead a week because we'll be looking at 302 next week to the Cage Warriors Newcastle card. Share our thoughts on a few of the fights on there. Obviously, Leon Hill from Ireland is in action. Harry Hardwick in the main event there. Couple of exciting fight announcements, ones that are just fresh off the press here as well, that we'll share our thoughts on towards the end. A quick 25-minute blast through this podcast. Harry, how are you, my man? You ready for another setup?
I'm grand now, ready to go. I think it's nice that we're doing a bit of diversification now and again, and let's get it going.
We talk about what we want to talk about, and what we want to talk about on this UFC Apex card is just the main event. Edson Barboza is back. Lerone Murphy is back. It's been a long, long road to this fight, and somewhat I just can't even get too grasped into this fight until we see Lerone in action in there. Look at injuries, cancel fights. He was supposed to be in there against Dan Ige earlier on this year. A fight got pulled. He finds him in there with a good challenge here in Edson Barboza, who, even in the latter stages of his career at 38 years of age right now, coming off two good wins, one over Billy Quarantillo and a good win over Sadiq Youssef in his last fight, sets him up nicely for Lerone Murphy, whose career has been so stop-start, Harry, and it must be very frustrating. I know you spoke to Lerone ahead of a couple of his proposed fights and ones that have fallen through, and it must be a very, very frustrating time for him because, time is not your friend when you're not fighting. And, for a guy who was considered one of the best prospects in the featherweight division, seems like an afterthought coming into this fight. But now he has the opportunity to come in against a guy like Barboza and create that hype around his name again and make a charge up the featherweight division.
100%. I mean, it's crazy. I went and had a look back. It's 2 years ago him and Nathaniel Wood were talking about fighting.
Crazy.
2 years. That is an incredible amount of time. I agree wholeheartedly that it's very, very difficult to have some technical analysis or even tactical analysis on this fight because I just don't know who Lerone Murphy is right now. We know that he's got slick boxing. We know that he's got power in his hands. We know that he's got takedown defense. We know he has a good gas tank. But the question is, all this time out, it's been a steady incline in competition levels. We're now taking another steady incline in competition levels. And as you've rightly said, at this level in his career, at his age, Edson Barboza is not what he once was, but he is still dangerous, right? He's still got lots and lots and lots of weapons that Lerone is going to have to be very, very acutely aware of. I'd like to think that Lerone Murphy will come in here 5 rounds and show us a little bit of everything. Show us, take Edson down, beat him up a little bit on the feet, beat him up a little bit on the ground. Let's see a little bit of jiu-jitsu. Let's see a little bit of what we've got here and really announce yourself back into the 145-pound division. But you just don't know. You just don't know. Lerone, certainly at least when he was talking to me at least a year and a half, 2 years ago now, there was a conversation around him still being in the gym and still training and still working around his injuries. And so he's very much a dedicated professional. But being outside of the cage for this amount of time, forget what Dom Cruz says. It does things to people. And Lerone Murphy is already, what is he, 32 or 33 now?
And so yeah, he is 32 right now. So yeah, he's time to get moving, as the lad says.
Time is ticking.
I obviously agree with you. It's difficult when someone has been out of the cage for quite some time, but we've seen Murphy's in there. He's picked up 2 of his 5 wins within the UFC by way of knockout. other 3 by way of decision. We've seen him kind of mix up his style a little bit, where he brings in striking, sometimes he brings in grappling. And I think the answer to this question is going to be relatively easy, and how he probably should approach this. Do you think Leon Murphy will be the type of fighter that will want to go in there, implement his game plan, maybe take the fight down? Or do you see him kind of trying to test his striking skills with someone with the level of skills that Barboza possesses going in there for this fight, Harry?
I expect Leon Murphy to make this a mixed martial arts fight. I don't see him as the kind of fighter that says, I am going to go out and I'm only going to strike with Edson Barboza. I'm only going to be in there in the pocket, smashing leg kicks and throwing big hooks and seeing if I can knock him out. I certainly expect Leon Murphy to go in and feel out the striking and to attempt to implement his game, but he's going to try and implement his game everywhere rather than just be egotistical. I suspect Leon Murphy has worked on a game plan with his coaches that involves grappling, involves cage wrestling, involves beating him up on the ground, and involves wearing Edson down as the fight goes. And so I suspect and would like to, if I'm not a betting man, as we've discussed, but I would hedge my bets that this is an MMA fight from Leon Murphy, should he need it. Don't get me wrong. If he goes in there and he feels that he is better on the feet than Edson Barboza, I suspect he will keep it there and he will do his best to knock him out. But sometimes in mixed martial arts, these things do happen.
They absolutely do. Do you think, I think I know the answer. I'm asking you questions that I probably know the answer to already, but I just want to kind of get your opinion. I think this is the toughest test of Leon Murphy's career so far. Would you agree?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
By a massive margin, I would say. Even if Edson Barboza is in the latter stages of his career, he's still quite good.
Definitely. Very good, very durable, great gas tank, always in fantastic condition and fantastic shape. Hits like a fucking Mack truck. Still got unbelievable dexterity in his kicking game. Still got a very, very, very strong chin. Still durable. And, you know, at the end of the day, maybe his body isn't moving as quickly as it once was, but his brain knows how to fight mixed martial arts. You know, it absolutely knows how to fight mixed martial arts. And Edson has always also been a guy with pretty solid takedown defense. And I am really interested to see how Leon Murphy looks against a 2024 Edson Barboza.
How does Edson Barboza kind of come and kind of take this victory over Leon Murphy? What would you like to see him doing?
Be Edson Barboza is the honest answer, you know? Like, when we see him at his best, he's extremely difficult to take down. He chews the fuck out of people's legs, vicious elbows, vicious knees, and some decent body push. And so I would like to see, as Ian dies on the microphone.
Sorry, excuse me. I pressed the mute button, but I must have pressed it again on the way back up. And it was your reaction that told me that I didn't press the mute button. So sorry to you, and sorry to anyone who had to listen to me cough my lung out there.
Not at all. I'm only bothered about the audience there. But yeah, I think for Edson, just go out and be yourself. Like, you know that it's going to be a mixed martial arts fight when it comes to Leon Murphy. At least I think so anyway. And he's always going to prepare for such. He's not going to prepare for this is just going to be a bang and a stand and bang type performance. This is going to be a well-rounded mixed martial arts fight, and I expect Edson to prepare accordingly.
Indeed. Yeah. Moving on to Cage Warriors Newcastle, Harry. Look, like I said, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I'm sure the lads will take a look at this fight card as well on the big podcast over the weekend as well. But a couple of interesting fights on the card. Obviously, Irish interest falls with Leon Hill coming back after suffering defeat over in his last fight, a fight that was at welterweight. He takes on Tommy Hawthorne. You can listen to what he has to say about that fight on the Owl Triangle this week, out right now on all podcast platforms. Coming back off the win over Ewan Davis. We'll talk about that fight in a minute. Anyone that you would like to highlight on this card, Harry, and fighters that you're looking forward to seeing? The main event obviously has a little bit of interest as well. I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
100%. I mean, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for Harry Hardwick. The title shot has been coming, right? He has looked good. I certainly, maybe this is brutal for me to say, but I don't think he's quite got the same ceiling as his brother George, but he's looked good in there. He has always put on exciting fights. He always goes for the finish. And Ian Dean knows what he's doing. Zafar Mosen, 13-4. We've obviously not seen him fight in the Cage Warriors cage just yet, but he knows what he's doing, and this is certainly not going to be a squash match. This is going to be a difficult test for Harry Hardwick. An interesting wrinkle here is that there is a potential that Harry Hardwick and George Hardwick become the first set of brothers to hold titles in Cage Warriors ever, which, you know, that's a nice, interesting piece of history for both of them. Nick Begley versus Umarkhan Ibragimov is an interesting fight. Nick Begley actually has 2 fights booked on this card. He's also listed on Topology against Nick Bukema, and so we'll see who he actually is supposed to.
Going to be a busy night of fights for him, isn't it?
Yeah. Fair play to him. 2 fights, 1 night. Can't turn it down. Obviously, Leon Hill is of real interest. And I think the two others, first is Joe Fields. He looks like an interesting fighter coming out of the Midlands. And James Power is the other one that I'm mostly interested in.
Yeah, lots of interesting fights there as well. If I could circle back around to Leon Hill, who takes on Tommy Hawthorne. Obviously, look at Leon, 6-2 in his career right now. Seems very up for this fight in talking to him this past week. You know, kind of rejuvenated his strength and conditioning plan. Looks in phenomenal shape, but really wants to come in and prove a point here as well. Look at 2 defeats, 1 in the opening fight of his career. Obviously, one at a catch weight that he took on like 6 days' notice. Obviously, the last one came at welterweight, where he lost to Ewan Davis, I think it was it? His name escapes. Ewan Davis, yeah, Ewan Davis. I thank you for the proper Welsh pronunciation on that as well. That was at welterweight as well, and you look at, he's still undefeated at lightweight. He's coming in here against Tommy Hawthorne. Wrestling is primarily what Tommy Hawthorne is known to do when he gets inside the cage. Has kind of a good pedigree there, and it'll be interesting. Although Leon, in speaking to us, kind of said that, you know, he's welcome to the challenge, he's up for it. Would you be expecting fireworks in a fight like this, Harry?
Fireworks, probably not. I think Leon is going to look good in this fight. He is somebody that, if we just have a quick look through the losses, right? Ewan Davis is a very good prospect. Joshua Nwoudi, very good prospect. Kenny Mokahana, we know all about him. Alexander O'Sullivan, back in his amateur days, very, very good fighter. Adam Darby, again, decent fighter. And, you know, having wins over people like Paddy McCrory and Marcin Zembala, you know, these are solid names, both in the amateur and in the professional ranks. And for somebody like Leon Hill, I think, like you have mentioned, sticking to a S&C program, picking an actual division, making sure your body is prepped for that division, making sure your mind is prepped for that division. I understand that there is a records for DJs type mentality in some of the gyms and some of the rooms around Ireland. But I think for somebody like Leon Hill,
certainly not in Team KF, I don't think, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's my point. There's no need to take short notice fights. There's no need to take fights up a weight class or here, there, and everywhere. Let's build a fighter who we have heard both Tom King and Chris Fields spit lyrically about. Let's see him build correctly, right? And I suspect that's exactly what we're going to see on Saturday
night. Funny that you actually say that as well, because you haven't heard the interview yet, because it hasn't been, like, at the time of this recording, hasn't been put out yet. But I asked him, you know, coming back off of that defeat, and what that loss taught him, and he actually cited the first loss of his career and his last loss against Ewan in his last fight, in that now he knows that he cannot rush anything. Taking fights at short notice, not good. You know, the welterweight fight in the last one kind of fell together as well, kind of at the last minute for him on the Dublin card. He says he knows now he needs at least 6 weeks to get himself into prime condition. But he says ever since that loss, he hasn't stopped training. He made an executive decision not to compete on the Dublin card, you know, just to kind of ease a little bit of pressure on him when it comes to like ticket sales and people bugging him. Pure focus on going out there and showcasing his abilities. And I'm very, very excited. I think with Leon, he's getting into that mentality where he's finding out about himself as a fighter. He knows what works for him and he knows what doesn't. And it's very difficult to do that on the professional ranks. Obviously, trial and error will bring wins and losses. But I'm very, very excited, and I expect a big, massive performance from Leon Hill against Tommy Hawthorne in the lightweight division. I know you went through a couple real quick. James Power, always exciting. He's going in there against Daniel Kolazinski. Power, was lined up on a title run, kind of was stopped in his tracks a little bit against Pajani. Picked up a good win against Gianluca Rocca in the last fight. Difficult enough challenge here against Kalinsky in this one, but I'd be expecting James to kind of go out there and put on a good showing as well, would you?
I'd say so, yeah. I think Cage Warriors know what they have on their hands in James Power, and there's an opportunity for them to build the next generation. And I think this is just the first stepping stone to do so.
100%. Anybody else on this card that you would suggest for anyone for fans to tune in, is what I would say? Jason Blair on here, obviously over from the States, a big wrestling pedigree there. Now we're seeing a few kind of interchanging. Jason Blair, I believe, would have been on a couple of the San Diego cards and stuff like that. And he's making his first stint over in the UK. Serious pedigree. Obviously, look at a couple of losses on his record so far, but he either wins early or loses early and has won split decision against Jeffrey Craig. Excited to see him come in here against Arthur's Legions.
Yeah, I mean, he made an interesting choice, right? That Paddy Pimlet and Molly McCann originally brought him over from the States to Next Gen to get some different looks. Obviously, Paddy has spent some time over in California with Justin Flores, J-Flow Judo, and Jason Blair was brought over as part of the camp in order to get him some different wrestling looks or some higher level wrestling looks. And it seems as though Next Gen for Jason Blair has been quite a nice fit, and it seems as though he's going to be fighting out of there, especially when he's over here in the UK. And so it's an interesting it's an interesting mix of styles and of personalities. I am sure he's learning lots and lots about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side of things from Next Gen, and I'm sure that he is trading those wrestling details too. But I think somebody with the pedigree of wrestling that can come into MMA, that's obviously an absolutely astounding base to build from. And who knows where his career could go, especially in somewhere like Cage Warriors.
Indeed. As we said at the start of the podcast, we just got a word of a couple of fights that have been announced. A little bit of a switch up in opponents for Tatsuro Tiara. Originally was chalked down to take on Joshua Van. That now has been changed. Joshua Van will now take on Tahir Ulanbekov, who was supposed to be fighting Alex Perez, who now fights Tatsuro Tiara. And a couple of nice mouth-watering fights there. And the original thought that we both had really about this fight when we were speaking about Tatsuro Tiara versus Alex Perez was a massive jump in quality here for Tatsuro Tiara against an in-form Alex Perez, it has to be said.
100%. My initial reaction was, Jesus, the lad's 22. Give him a break, give him 23, whatever he is. But Tatsuro Tiara is somebody that we raised the klaxons on very early to say this is a very exciting prospect, very, very, very dangerous fighter, very lethal transitions on the ground, really, really, really good submission hunting, good damage on the ground, quick on the feet, but starts slow, gets hit a bit. Specifically that CJ Vajera fight, he was somebody that got clipped early, had to rally himself, find his way back into the fight, and then take it over. Alex Perez, we talked in his last fight that when he finds somebody hurt, he's a steamroller, and he's going to keep you hurt, and he's going to put you against the fence, and he's going to work you. And so, you and Spencer and in part Shawnee have said for a long time that there's an element with these young fighters that if they put together enough of a win streak, you just vault them up and see what happens, right? At 22, 23, however old he is, there is still so much time for Tatsuro Tiara to round out a game, come back from a loss, rebound, whatever it is. But if he goes out and he starches Alex Perez or he subs Alex Perez in the way that we've seen him finish some of the other fighters, then it's just an unbelievable win altogether. Unbelievable.
It's a classic case of the risk reward kind of style fight. The risk is massive for Tatsuro Tiara at this stage of his career, but the rewards will also be massive, because if he picks up a win over Alex Perez, I feel, he puts himself right in the mix for title contention. Probably wouldn't get it off a win, but would definitely line himself up, I would imagine, for a number one contender fight. If you're Alex Perez, right, and you're after doing what you've done, he picked up a win recently against Mateus Nicolau, excuse me. Would you think he'd be slightly disappointed in kind of getting a name like this, to be honest, after picking up such a good win against, a legit prospect? And I say legit prospect because Mateus Nicolau has been in and around there, the top 5, top 10 for quite some time. Whereas that, Tatsuro Tiara hasn't had the chance to prove it. Now he does. But it's a big jump down in class of opposition for Perez, considering what he did in his last fight.
I mean, frankly, it was a big step down regardless. Taguero Lembekov from Mateus Nicolau is a step down.
Yeah.
Tatsuro is an even larger potential step down from a divisional ranking perspective anyway. I guess the question, and we're going to find out as we get closer to the fight, is this could be for Perez I need to make up for lost time here. I was out of that title picture for a little while, lost to Devison Figueiredo. Then the quadrology happened and all of that stuff sort of really took apart the title picture for me. He then went out and massive amount of cancelled fights, couldn't get in the octagon. He's now had 2 fights, and then the opportunity comes for a quick turnaround and he takes it. Is this just I'll take any fight anywhere against anyone just to get myself back up and vaulted into that title picture? And if so, I really can't blame Alex Perez for that. We have said before, somebody needs to give somebody a chance, and fair play to Alex Perez for doing it.
And it's the type of decision that, UFC will look favorably upon, of you kind of, not being too hesitant to kind of give someone an opportunity to come into the rankings as well. So look, you mentioned Ulanbekov versus Joshua Van. Any quick thoughts on that one before we move on to the last flyweight fight?
That's an absolutely massive step up for Joshua Van. Like, Taguero Lembekov long and awkward, and he can grapple, and okay, he doesn't hit the hardest, but he's a volume striker, and he's not somebody that goes away easily. And him versus Tim Elliott was just an absolute barrel of fun altogether. He's tough, he's gritty, and Joshua Van has looked greener than Tatsuro Tiara has, right? And so chucking him in against somebody like Taguero Lembekov is a massive ask. But these are the new breed of flyweights, and who knows what their ceiling is? Who knows?
Indeed. Like, final one on this kind of duo of matchups, because we've played a little bit of mix and match here now with these. Obviously, it was originally Tiara versus Van, which was a great fight in its own right, one that probably, made more sense on paper. Why do you think the UFC made the decision to do a little bit of a switcheroony on these 2 fights?
I mean, I couldn't tell you. I really don't know. I mean, primarily because Tatsuro Tiara has star power, I think, has potential star power. He has an aura about him that is difficult to describe. When he walked out for his debut, I think myself, yourself, Spencer, Shawnee, we looked up and we said, oh, we've got something here. We've definitely got something here.
Well, you look at he had like 11 wins, 11 finishes before he came to the UFC. And we were looking, when someone comes in with a record like that, you're wondering, was he fighting bums or is this guy legit good? But he showed very early that he's legit good.
Very much so, and immediate severe spotlight, which obviously tells you all you need to know. But
he might as well retire now. He's made it already, and he's maybe done it multiple times. The Tiara has he?
Yeah, he's got 2. Yeah,
he's on the hat trick.
I just think that, no offense to Joshua Van, he just doesn't carry the same level of mystique or star power yet that somebody like Tatsuro Tiara does, and I wonder whether this was a visa issue or a scheduling issue or an injury, and we've pushed one back and shuffled around. The UFC are not against doing this sort of thing, but I do think it is insane, because Taguero Lembekov, Alex Perez is a competitive fight, right? Competitive fight for sure. And the 2 prospects fighting off against each other was something that you and I, we like that sort of matchmaking, especially now at this specific point in their career where
the timing was right for both of them, to be honest. But look at it's.
I mean,
It is a wild one. Like, worst case scenario, look at Tiara goes up, loses. He has lots and lots of time to rebound as well. But I don't know. Sometimes I wonder what the rush is. There's definitely going to be a rush to see if Manuel Cape can make weight this time against Muhammad Mokaev, and I think that's the big lingering question over this fight for UFC 304 in Manchester. A phenomenal fight on paper, but Cape just misses weight, and the UFC are giving him another opportunity to make the weight here now again. But they're not, stylistically, this could be a horrible matchup for Cape, and stylistically, this could be a horrible matchup for Muhammad Mokaev. If Mokaev can take him down, obviously I'd give him the advantage. But if Cape can keep it up, an excellent, excellent striker. Are you happy about this fight?
Not really. Not really, because I just can't trust Manel Cape. Like, we know that almost to a fault that Muhammad Mokaev will turn up and will be on weight and will make it. He sent us all a little bit grossed out the last time he fought, with pictures of him being ill in a bathroom after making the weight, ill on fight week. We have seen him take horrific knee damage, go get rehab and fight super early afterwards in the Jafel Filo matchup. And I just, that come hell or high water, Muhammad Mokaev is going to be there, and he's going to stand on that scale at 125 pounds, and he's going to turn up to that cage the next day. The real issue here, and if I'm the UFC, I am scheduling a backup fighter for this, because this is likely the co-main event, right? If it's not the co-main event because of Paddy,
I would say it won't even come close to be the co-main event. I would imagine they're going to try to match Leon, and they might try and match Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, of course, yeah, Leon.
And then you got Paddy, you got Arnold Allen. It's a very definitely, I would say, a main card worthy fight. But you would hope they're going to look to stack this card. They have a good opportunity to stack that Manchester card as well. But like I said, there hasn't been too much movement at the top of it. Actually, the event itself is in question with the arena. So a lot of questions around this fight between Cape and Mokaev, but I think, it might have been even a better conversation to have about the question around the Manchester event, maybe a conversation for another time. But I'm kind of in the same boat as what you are, Harry. Very, very hard to get. Like, when I saw it, I was like, that's interesting. But I have wasted all of my excitement on Manuel Cape for the last 3 fights where he failed to make weight. I went out on a limb at the start of this year, and I said that I believed that at the end of the year, he would be the 125-pound champion. And I believed if he did not have weight issues, that he'd have a damn good chance of doing that, if I'm being completely honest. But you just can't trust his weight. UFC can't trust his weight. And you got to think that this has to be the last hurrah for Manuel Cape. If he doesn't make the weight this time or pulls out with this fight, he's going to be forced either to move up, or the UFC might go old school, take drastic circumstances and chop him all together. But I'd imagine it would be the forceful move up to 135 if he doesn't make the weight. What do you think, Harry? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, look, if we are to allow ourselves a morsel of excitement here, it's an absolutely mouth-watering fight. It's a mouth-watering fight because we know how crisp and clean and creative the striking of Manel Cape can be. And we also know that sometimes Mokaev can let himself get away a little bit with the ego, with the striking, with being a little bit too loose on the feet, with being a little bit too playful in that octagon. And he can absolutely not afford to do that against a prime Manel Cape. But in the same vein, Manel Cape is not going to have come up against the relentless style of grappling that Muhammad Mokaev can offer him. We've seen Mokaev in the last fight against Perez. He was so tired, so tired. And yet he was still ducking under, wrestling from his knees, finding a way to get the fight down, finding a way to get it exactly where he wanted it to be. And man, I mean, that is the foundation of Muhammad Mokaev. But this fight is dangerous for Mokaev if both of them turn up.
Definitely is, and it'd be up to Mikhaev, I think, to kind of set that pace on someone like Cape. Even if he does make weight, obviously you're going to be killing yourself to get down there. So very, very interesting. Fingers crossed it happens. Look, it was just announced last week, and we said before it falls out, we wanted to give ourselves the opportunity to at least talk about it. So hopefully we'll get to talk about it a little bit sooner, closer to that Manchester event. And that wraps us up for the Severe Setup this week. Thanks to everyone for listening. At BJJ_Harry Powell, at IO'Neill MMA. We'll catch you next week for the breakdown and the setup again. Take care. Enjoy the fights this